Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to round 4 coverage of my games from the 2019 Southern California Open. After 3 rounds, I was at 1.5 points, and all my opponents up to this point have been kids. So far it's the kids 1.5 and the old guy 1.5. But in round 4, I got to play another old guy, so for the first time, someone in my age range, and his rating was 1800. My rating for the tournament was 1837. He was actually at his rating floor, so the rating of 1800 means that he was rated over 2000 at some point. My rating floor, by the way, is at 1700. So if I lose enough, I will get relegated down to Class B. Whereas his rating floor allows him to stay in Class A as long as he wants to maintain it. You can also petition to have your rating floor removed if you feel it's no longer appropriate. Anyway, it was nice to play a fellow adult. He started off with c4, and so I chose to play my usual system against the English. And I was looking forward to this to see what an experienced player would play against it, because he's probably seen pretty much everything that people play against the English at this point. So I played knight f6 here. He went knight c3, plays c5, going for the symmetrical English, plays knight f3, and I played d5. And that's the idea of the way that I play. I play for an early d5. I'm not claiming to have invented this. This is in the opening book. It's not necessarily the most popular way of playing, but it's just one that I've been trying to develop experience with, and I've had some good success with it. So the idea is that white almost always takes. That's usually the best move there. And I get a half-open file here, and he gets a half-open file. So it's not a totally closed English position. It's a way of avoiding those kind of positions. And I think he plays the principled move here. He plays e4, kicking my knight. And I thought a lot at this point. This is kind of an interesting juncture. I thought a lot about the move knight to b4. Because on b4, the knight is looking at some potentially sensitive light squares. Eventually, I rejected it because I thought after knight b4, he could just play d3. And I didn't see where I was going from there. Although the chess engine likes this, and this is in the opening book. Knight b4 was the most popular move. This was one way of responding. And then after this, say after d3, I play knight to c6, bring the other knight out. He can kick this knight away, and I guess this is why I didn't like it. But this knight will probably come around and get back into the game somehow. And in the meantime, I have kind of a clamp on the d4 square, and he has a backwards d3 pawn. So it gives me something to play for, although white, I'm sure, still has the opening advantage here. But might be an interesting way to play. Let's see. And but the main line after knight b4, given by the opening book, is this tactical line here with bishop b5 check. So I would have to also be willing to face this, knight to c6, if I were to play this way in the future. And then d4. So not being content with d3 and suffering a backwards pawn, but just blowing the position open with d4. And this is a pawn sack. I can take that pawn, and the line continues with a3. So not moving the knight. Then I take the knight. White trades queens, and I have to take with the king because this knight is pinned. And then white takes back the pawn, I take back, and white takes. So we can pause here. Well, one more move, e6. Now it's white's turn. This pawn is under fire, but what's the situation here? It's black is a pawn up and has a solid pawn structure. But white is really well developed, and notice he can castle with check or bring the rook over to give a check right away. And my pieces are still on the back rank here. So white has more than enough compensation for the pawn. So there's still a slight edge to white, although apparently playable for black. So anyway, those are the opening book lines from this position. I discovered in this line that when you get into trouble, you can often just take on c3. So that's what I did here. And white will often avoid the queen trade and go for a longer game, which is fine with me too. I don't especially want the queen trade. And then, so that's the way he played it. He took with the b pawn rather than the d pawn. And then I played knight c6. So at this point, we're actually out of the opening book. just for your information, G6 is a line in the opening book, and also E6 is a move that should be considered here. We'll show why. We'll show why in a second. Anyway, I played knight C6, and it's not. I think this is still playable, although I think white has a pretty good edge after D4. But my next move is a blunder, actually. Now, it wasn't exploited during the game, so it's not like it's game over here, but it's a very interesting position to look at, and so see if you can figure out why this move is a blunder. And I want to do it from this position, because this is the position on the board where I have to decide my move, and I have to be aware of problems I might get into. And the move I chose was bishop g4, and the idea I chose in playing that was I was going to, if he played d5 to kick my knight, I was going to play knight to e5. So that was my plan. Bishop g4, pawn to d5, knight to e5. And so I'll erase those arrows, and you can look at the board in this position and see if you can figure out why that would be a mistake. White has a really good move in that position. Okay, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. So let's go ahead and just put that position on the board. He did not play d5, maybe because he thought after d5, knight e5, I'd have pressure on this pinned knight here, and it might be good for me. And he might passively defend with the bishop, but he doesn't have to do that. He can take the knight. And so if you didn't see the tactic before, you might want to pause the video here and see if you can spot it at this point. But anyway, I'm just going to keep going here. I can't take the knight. That's just a free piece there. So I have to take the queen if I want to try and maintain any kind of material equality. But here's the key move. He doesn't take my bishop. He goes here with the check. And there's no way to save the queen. I have to give a queen back. And not only do I have to give the queen back, but the knight is covering that square. So after I play queen d7, say bishop d7 check, king here, king takes d1, I'm down 2 pieces. And I have no development. I have 2 rooks and a bishop. And he's got 2 rooks and 3 pieces. And he's got some development too. So that would be a total disaster. What that means is that after bishop g4, I might as well put this on the board now. I actually played it. If he plays d5 here, I have to go back with my knight or off to the side. In any case, that's a very strong advantage to white. So bishop g4 is really a big mistake. But I played it, and he didn't take the best advantage of it. He just played bishop to e3, rather. Bishop e3. So he's just defending his center. He's content to have a good center, and white still has a decent position after this, but black is okay too. So I play g6. He goes bishop to c4. He's getting his pieces actively placed, and I played e6. Oh, I wanted to mention something else. Before playing this bishop g4 move, you might wonder how you can spot tactics like this. And one problem is that I didn't castle my king, but the second problem is that I never moved the e-pawn. So if we back up to the point where I played knight c6, that's why e6 at this point might be prudent. Or maybe right after he played, if we go forward a few moves right here, after knight c6, he played d4. I might have considered e6 here. And I was reluctant to play it because it blocks in this bishop, and I was trying to get it outside the pawn chain. But, I just can't do it. So you might as well bite the bullet and play that way. Anyway, the chess line, actually, the engine line, says exchange first and then play e6. So that's how I should play this position instead of bishop g4. So let's continue. Like I said, he played not that bishop, he played bishop e3, showing up the center. I went g6, bringing this bishop out over here. He went bishop c4. d5 was probably a good move in those positions as well. He didn't go there. He went bishop c4. I went e6 now. He castled. and went bishop g7. So a little bit of normal development. Played rook to b1, and I thought about this position for a while, and I realized I could just castle here. Castling is what I want to do. It's kind of the the next natural move in the position. So I castled, and my idea is if he takes the pawn here, I mean the rook was threatening to take on b7, I have this fork, so I'm defending that pawn tactically, and I get castling in. So I think that was good play. So he dropped his bishop back at this point. He went bishop e2. And I decided to take off the knight. This bishop is somewhat trapped out here. And I thought it would be better off to trade it for the knight at this point. He took back, and then I took on d4. He takes back. And then I played queen to d7. I was getting away from some tactics here. Not there. Yeah, queen to d7. Like that. No, what I was doing is defending the b-pawn now. So I did that exchange and then defended the b-pawn. This pawn is hanging. I could have grabbed that, but I thought I would go ahead and defend the b-pawn first. And that's not the best way to play. Actually, the best way to play is to go ahead and grab this pawn. And then after these exchanges, he can take here. And, well, it's an even position, but I have a good-looking knight here against his bishop. I could push this pawn forward maybe to support it there, and it would be hard to dislodge. And, you know, it looks like his rook is active here, but my pieces are not badly placed as either. And this is kind of a bad-looking bishop, blocked in behind the pawn chain and under threat from the knight. So that would be, if I had spotted that idea, that would be a good move for, that would have been a good move for me and would have given me a slight edge. Instead I went queen d7, and finally he plays this d5 move, which has been in the air for a long time. He had that earlier. But this is just good for white. I mean, he moved his rook away from the this file before advancing that pawn, so he's being very careful in his sequence of moves. I played knight e5 here, and he dropped his bishop back to e2, and then I played b6 to. I didn't want the queen tied down forever defending that pawn, so I just wanted to put that on b6, and then I was going to sort things out. But actually, white has a good move in this position that I totally missed. Although I was sitting here at the board thinking about what to do next and what white would likely play, and at that point I noticed that he had this really good move. So I spotted the move even before he played it, which is a sure sign that that I'm not in great form here. So pause the video if you want time to think about it. You should be able to spot the idea for white. What white played here was pawn to f4, and now I'm in a somewhat embarrassing position here. This knight has no moves. All these squares are covered. The bishop covers those squares. My own pieces cover those squares. And of course he was just kicked away from c6. So the knight in the middle of the board with 8 moves has no move that he can play. And really it's just game over. So I think it's worth dwelling on this a little bit. How could I make such a simple blunder other than being in bad form? So when I played knight to e5, I'm still okay. And the knight at this point has 2 escape squares. It can escape by taking the bishop with check, or it can escape over here to the c4 square and maybe come back into the game via d6, something like that. So it wasn't seemingly in any danger at this point. What I failed to notice is this bishop e2 move. It actually does 3 things. It removes the knight, removes the bishop from this square, so I can no longer escape with my knight by taking a piece. The second thing it does is it covers this square, so my knight no longer has c4 as an escape square. And the third thing it does is it frees up the f-pawn. So it's one move that does three things. And it's easy to miss because, you know, you're kind of expecting him to move this bishop or to do something about it because he maybe doesn't want to give up the bishop for the knight. So when you see the move bishop to e2, you think to yourself, oh, I know what he's doing. He's just getting his bishop away from my knight. And if you're careless, like I was, you don't stop to think, what else does that move do? So this position is still okay for me after bishop e2. I just need to play, well, the chess engine recommends exchanging first and then playing rook to c8. And that guarantees this spot for the knight. I wonder, I didn't check the intermediate move. Oh yeah, if he plays f4 here, by taking first, I've guaranteed my knight a spot on c4. No, that doesn't work either because of the pin. But I've given my knight a spot over here. So taking eliminates one of the threats to my knight and gives it a home. So taking back is natural, and then rook to c8 gives the knight a home on the c4 square, and then the game would go on from here. Maybe I'm even a little bit better. He's got the bishop pair, but I have a isolated pawn. Oh, it's a passed pawn. It's probably about equal chances for both sides. Anyway, I played b6, and it's really game over at this point. He played f4, and I played for some tricks, so the game continued. I mean, this was pretty early in the evening still, and had nothing to do, so I might as well continue the game. So we'll just play through the rest of it. I played queen b7. He took. He didn't make any mistakes here. Oh, he didn't take that way. He took the knight, of course. Moving the queen out of the way gave the knight an escape square, so he had to take the knight right away. So I get a pawn for the knight. He took on e6. Let's see. I decided to take this pawn, maybe put some pressure on his bishop. He just dropped the bishop back, not giving me a chance to take with check. And then I brought my rook over. I could have taken that pawn, of course, but I just wanted to try and activate my pieces and try and get something going. He played bishop f3, kicking my queen. I threw in bishop takes h2 check, hoping to weaken his king side a bit. And then I took this pawn. So what is it? I've got 3 pawns now, but he's got 2 pieces. So 3 pawns against 2 pieces. Sometimes you can hold an endgame like that, but there's queens on the board. It doesn't look very promising here. He went queen d5, played h5. He took, so he wasn't afraid of the endgame. Yeah, those bishops are very strong. Let's see, he went rook f to e1. I went rook to f6, trying to skewer the bishops. He went rook to b5, yeah, activating his pieces. I go rook to c8. He went rook b to e5, doubling, and I moved my king over to keep his rooks from coming down. He plays bishop to h4. So he's going to maneuver his bishop into the game. And that's, yeah, these bishops on the open board are very strong, and I never have time to get my pawns rolling. Let's see, I played rook to f4 here. Went bishop g5. Rook f to c4, get my rooks doubled. Goes with the check. King here is forced. Goes with this check. Now I have to trade or lose a piece. And then the king goes to h7. Played bishop back to g5. I went rook to a4, looking at this pawn. He went bishop to f6, looking at mating me. I went g5, and then he went bishop to e4 check. And I just resigned at this point. There's no good move, and my king is kind of trapped over here. So anyway, it was an interesting game. There was that part at the beginning, this bishop g4 move. Something to know about, that you can't play knight e5 after d5. This little trick with the bishop coming out and checking the king on this diagonal when the pawn is still here, blocking the king from moving. That's a nice tactic to know about. So you guys should try and remember that, and of course remember not to not to allow your knight to get trapped in the middle of the board. Anyway, the game ended in this position, and so that was the end of the second day at the tournament. Now, I mean, that was the second game I played on Sunday, and that the game I played earlier was a really long game. We both used up all our time, and we're playing on the increment towards the end. No, actually, my opponent was playing on the increment towards the end. I still had a little bit of time left, but it was a long game, and that may have contributed to to my play here. But but in any case, I decided to play another round, face see what happens the next day. So stay tuned for round 5 coverage.